This is taking me back to early 2019. We were at Fremont doing a podcast with you when,
Oh, yeah.
remember when Tesla was in production hell with the Model 3? And I think you were sleeping under your desk at that time. And you gave us a lot of time to really help us understand the story and what was going to happen. And the rest is history. So just wanted to recount that.
Do you think that going back to like the Model 3 ramp when you had customers and shareholders going out and facilitating delivery of vehicles, do you think that could have happened without people having like skin in the game in the same way?
Yeah, absolutely. Most of the people who helped were not shareholders.
That's interesting.
I mean, there's not that many shareholders.
I don't know. You know, Elon, so many people have come up to me and all of us over the years because we were out there, pounding the table for Tesla against the traditional financial world. And they read our research on Tesla and bought into it. And so many people have come up and said, thank you for doing that research, alerting us to the opportunities. What's happened to the public markets, Elon, is I think they're kind of broken. I agree with you. I think part of it is regulatory, but part of it is the way the traditional financial world works. And I've seen this time and again, is if a company is not in a broad-based benchmark, then financial analysts and portfolio managers very often say, okay, not relevant to me, not in an index, I'm not competing against it. That's how broken it is. Instead of focusing on the future and which companies are going to be transformative and are going to scale brilliantly, they're very nicely situated in the past, in stocks that are where they are in benchmarks because of past performance. That's the other thing that's happened here.
Sure.
But it's important we change that, Elon. And Tesla, it has been a change maker in that regard. Sure, you didn't get into an index because of the way they construct them until Tesla was $500 billion. So a lot of
It was pretty crazy.
I know. How many more? How many companies are bigger than that? It's just crazy. But you did. You made it, and you opened people's eyes. And we're trying to change this shift away from passive, back to active, so that there is an efficient allocation of capital.
Yeah, you're touching on a very important point, which is that I think the percentage of the market that is passive is too great at this point. So at the end of the day, somebody actually has to make an active decision. The passive investors are riding on the decisions of the active investors, and so the passive investments like index funds and whatnot they're like they're an amplifier. It's like that, like an electric guitar amp or something. So, but you don't want that amplifier gain to be too high, or you get essentially massive movements of the stock based on the decisions of maybe 4 or 5 active major stock pickers.
Well, actually, it's a little more complicated. So if you're in a risk-off market, a bear market like we were in 22, what actually happens is these managers are very fearful and they just get closer and closer to their benchmarks and they sell the kind of stocks that we're invested in because we're completely active. We're benchmark agnostic. We just don't even look at them. We're all about the future. So that's in a risk-off market. It punishes stocks that are not in indexes more than otherwise would be the case. And then to your point, it rewards stocks that in a risk-on period that are growing very quickly like yours. And as you say, yes, there's a pylon effect if they get into a benchmark. Now everybody has to consider them. So it's a really distorted way of that the public equity markets have evolved.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, getting into any kind of index or passive fund will, I think, increase the volatility significantly because just now it's amplified. That stock's now amplified by by the passives. And I mean, I think Bogle it was a good idea to create Vanguard and passives, but it's just gone too far.
It has.
So you just don't want to have the amp is turned up too high. Is a way to think of it.
Yeah.
So there should be more active and less passive.
Totally agree. And absolutely. And the other thing that's happening, I didn't know we were going to go here, Elon, but the other thing that really is gripping the markets is, 75% plus of trading every day is algorithmic. And we see they're very simple algorithms, in a bear market. Okay, do they have cash? Are they burning cash? And those two variables will dominate the stock action. So yeah, we've watched this over the last 3 years. It's a very simplistic way of managing money, and I really do think it has led to the most massive misallocation of capital in history. A lot more private companies should be public, but we understand why they don't go public because of the kind of behavior you're subjected to. And now you know all about it, right?
I mean, at SpaceX, we never think about what the quarter. We never think about it, and we don't think about the stock price. So there's a lot of pressure, like immense pressure, on a public company to not have a bad quarter. So this can actually result in a less efficient operation where you're going to great lengths at the end of a quarter to not disappoint people. That's just how it goes. And then you've also got a long-term challenge with public markets where a lot of the analysts following companies have a time horizon that is maybe only a year or two. It's rarely more than a few years. So they literally don't care, because then their incentive structure is short term. They do not care about what your long term outcome will be, because their career is dependent on how you do in the short term.
Elon,
Right.
you have been great at, I think, standing up to short-term oriented shareholders. That's one of the scores in our scoring system as we're evaluating companies. Is this a visionary management? And will they stand up to short-term shareholders who want their profits now, their dividends, their share repurchases? Will they invest aggressively enough in the future? And I think you've done a great job.
Well, thank you. And credit to the Tesla team as well. But that said, we at Tesla we go to great lengths to ensure that our quarter is good, that we don't disappoint, because it's not so much about it's just that we feel like we have a sort of moral obligation to I don't know, that to not have a bad quarter and disappoint people. So the number of New Year's Eves that I've spent in delivery centers is like, I don't know, of 6. I don't know. 7, I don't know. I've lost count how many times I was delivering cars until like basically midnight on New Year's Eve personally. So people at the company. So I believe in providing stock to the people at the company, the employees and creators of the company. It's important to provide them stock to have the incentive be aligned with the company outcome, and then they at various points want to gain liquidity, so that you want to then establish an outside valuation. And so it's not just me deciding it, and enable liquidity for those who've been awarded stock and options at the companies, and it's generally been my approach to award everyone at the company stock. At Tesla, we awarded everyone stock, no matter how junior they were. So that actually obviously made a lot of people millionaires. I think Tesla may have created more employee millionaires than any company in history.
Yeah.
So I would say, like, if there's a company that's created more employee millionaires than Tesla, there's 1 or 2 others, but really the sheer Tesla's around 140,000 people, and so I think we might be number one. So.
I think you are.
But now, ironically, because fate loves irony, OpenAI is super closed source, and for maximum profit. It should be renamed Closed for Maximum Profit AI. It won't be more accurate. So because that's it's literally the polar opposite of what how it was started. I guess I generally have a bias in favor of open source, and you can see that certainly with the X platform, where we've open sourced the algorithm, and for example, for community notes, we open source not just the algorithm, but all the data as well. So you can see exactly how a node was created. It can be audited by third parties. There's no mystery, nothing hidden at all.
I think that's seems to be one of the confusing things about open source as pertains to large language models is it's not as simple, and I think this has been lost in some of the debate, as just open sourcing the code. It's open source as the shades of grey here, of course, with parameter weight data. There's all of that spectrum, and I think that's been maybe lost from some of the debate. So it's great to hear.
Yeah, there's actually very little code, very little actual traditional lines of software. Certainly at the inference level, there's very little. It's a remarkably tiny number of lines of code. So it's just these giant, weights files, and what your hyperparameter, numbers are, and it's basically a giant comma separated value file. So I always find it amusing to contemplate that perhaps our digital god will be a CSV file. And then you make a new CSV file that has maybe more weights, and the weights are better, and then you pretty much delete the old one. So just the AI is evolving and deleting its prior self constantly.
So we're going to worship a giant Excel file, essentially. That's perfect.
Kind of. I mean, you need a very big, it's a lot of cells, but it's really just a bunch of numbers, and then those numbers they're getting smaller in magnitude too. Going from FP16 to FP32 to FP16 to int16 to int8, and now it looks like things are trending towards mostly int4. So they're not particularly large numbers.
And back to
I'm not sure if I'm probably not answering the question, but I mean, I think it's true that closed source is not that far from a time standpoint, not that far ahead of open source. But let's say, and if you assume open source is you have everything in 6 months, because of the immense rate of improvement of AI, that 6 months is actually a massive amount of time. Or at least the delta in an exponentially improving situation, 6 months will, I think, feel like an eternity. So I think closed will outperform open by a meaningful amount at any given point in time.
And given I was just going to say, given the questions we were talking about before about truth and not truth, and do you think in 10 years' time AI will have been a net truth improver or detractor from where we are today?
Well, I think it'll be speaking at least for Grok, I think it will be a significant truth improver. That is literally our goal: is to be maximum truth seeking, maximally curious, minimizing the error between perceived reality and described reality and actual reality, and always acknowledging the error, not being too confident about it. I think there will be a competition for truth, and people will tend towards the one that they think is most accurate. So, and if there's at least one AI that is aiming for maximum accuracy, I think it pushes all of the AIs to aim for maximum accuracy. Just as with the X platform, FK Twitter, as soon as X pushes for maximum truth and accuracy, it sort of forces the hand of others. The others now also have to do that.
Right, the truth arms race among the CSVs, and is one of our theses, I think, with ARC is that Tesla is one of the most undervalued AI companies there is because of the insane amount of data you've got on to feed into Autonomous. I don't know if there's any commentary on that, because I think obviously with the rise of these LLM companies, which are by and large working off essentially available data that is not proprietary, the benefits coming to the companies like Tesla that understand how to use the AI benefits but do have these enormous proprietary data pools seems like that's going to be the next frontier.
Yeah, I think that's an accurate description. Tesla is one of the leading AI companies in the world, and with respect to real world AI, it is obviously by far and away the leader. So the word large language model, with phrase large language model, LLM, is massively overused. But what I do see happening is somewhat of a convergence towards intelligence. It's just, Tesla, really to make full self-driving work, you kind of need baby AGI in the car, because you need to understand reality, and reality is messy and complicated. And just as a side effect, the car AI has to be able to read, for example. It has to be able to read arbitrary science as just a little side effect of understanding reality in every language. So everything is coming down to different layers of transformers and diffusion, and how you put together the transformers and the diffusion. That's why I sort of made that somewhat niche AI joke on the X platform. Who do you think will be president in 2032? Transformers or diffusion?
Do you think that switching to full stack AI for Tesla's full self-driving reduces the kind of forecast error for you in terms of when the problem will be solved? As in, you famously have said it's a year away for a few years now. Do you think that actually line of sight, wherever it ends up, you'll have a better line of sight on when you're going to cross a particular threshold of performance where it can go without human intervention?
Yeah, I mean, the car is already incredibly good at driving itself. Now, especially if you say okay, drive in California, which is both generally easy driving because you don't have heavy rain and snow and that kind of thing in most parts of California. And Tesla engineering is primarily in California, so it's gonna overfit for solving California. But if you're just driving, say, around Palo Alto, the probability that you'll need an intervention at this point is incredibly low. And in fact, even if you're driving through San Francisco, the probability of an intervention at this point is very low. So we're really just going through a march of nines. Like, how many nines of reliability do you need before somebody does not need to monitor the system?
It's so interesting. GM basically shutting down Cruise. Tasha has done the work on safety, and it seems that Tesla with FSD has an accident once every 3.2 million miles. At Tesla without FSD, 600,000 miles. The average vehicle on the road, I think, this is surface streets, 190,000, and Cruise was 40,000. So there really was a safety issue there. Do you worry that it has potentially set back regulators, from considering autonomous transportation, or is this data, given that accidents on the streets have gone up in the last 10 years, fairly dramatically, actually, because of texting?
Yeah,
Do you think,
exactly.
do you think that regulators are going to look at the data, which, I mean, we've done the research, Tasha's done the research on this, and is pretty compelling?
Well, our regulator in the U.S. is the enforcement division of NHTSA, for whom I actually have a lot of respect. I think those guys they really have. I mean, they're quite. I think actually, in my experience thus far, have been quite sensible. That doesn't mean that there aren't silly things that happen from time to time, but they've really been quite sensible because they see the actual truth of the accidents, and they see the fact that there are on the order of 40,000 people killed every year in motor vehicle accidents, and so they actually do care about the safety statistics, and they do recognize that there's always going to be some risk with cars. And they're well aware of the fact that our cars are much safer than other vehicles. So, we really, I mean, there've been a few things where, maybe we have had some disagreements, but, like for example, coming to an absolute full stop at stop streets, even when it's very clear there are no cars anywhere in sight that could possibly cause an impact. No cars, no pedestrians, completely clear, and actually almost no humans stop at stop streets, at stop signs. Almost no humans actually come to a full stop. They may think they came to a full stop, but typically they'll be going at least a few miles an hour. So that they said, well, the law does say that you have to stop at a stop street, well, even though almost no humans do. So that actually created a bit of a challenge for us because we had to select the rare cases from the fleet where humans actually stopped at stop streets, at stop signs. And then actually get our QA team to stop at stop streets and then overfit the stopping at stop signs in order to get the car to stop at stop signs because it was trying to behave like a sort of good normal human driver who does not stop at stop signs. So we had a disagreement there on it, but we ultimately have made the car stop at stop signs, even though it's a little annoying. But overwhelmingly, so this is one of the things the media will try to create, this that I'm some sort of law-breaking maverick who just does what he wants and doesn't care about legal matters. This is actually not true. Of the literally millions of laws that I am subject to and my company is subject to, there are a handful over the years that we've disagreed with. But the vast majority, 99.9% of laws and regulations, we do abide by and we do agree with. Well, maybe don't agree with. We certainly abide by. There's once in a while there's a disagreement, but it's really minor. But if you sum up the disagreements across over the 20 years, it can just sound like a lot, but in fact, my companies are incredibly law abiding. So that's the truth of it. Anyway, I think it'll be fine from a regulatory standpoint when we can show that there's even completely without supervision, there is a massive statistical case for self-driving being actually safer than if someone had their hands on the wheel or was even potentially having their hands on the wheel. Then I think the regulators will accept that.
It's been really interesting as AI. We were watching the breakthroughs, as everybody has, of course, in AI, and we had agreed with you. Our original research had autonomous mobility in pretty much full force. This was our original research by now. But if we didn't have the breakthroughs in AI that we've seen, particularly transformer architecture, it wouldn't have been possible, right? But we didn't know that. Is that how you're viewing it now?
Well, it's certainly true that transformers are transformational.
Yes.
Pretty much everyone's using transformers, and it's really just how many transformers, what kind of transformers are you using? Autoregressive transformers, which are very memory bandwidth intensive. I think I'm not sure you can really do AI without transformers in a meaningful way. Diffusion is also very important. It just really looks like AGI is some combination of transformers and diffusion.
That's interesting. Does diffusion help Elon in the things that transformers are not necessarily that good at yet, like planning and remembering, rather than sort of a current state?
I think transformers are important for all aspects of AI. Yeah, computers are very good at remembering things. Your phone remembers the video that you took down to the last pixel, whereas most humans cannot remember who they met last week. So memory is the easy. We've already outsourced memory to computers. In that, like you say, how much of human knowledge is in digital form, versus contained in human neurons? It's overwhelmingly in silicon rather than biological neurons.
Right.
And there's these. I think it's always it's good to think of to try to consider what are the most fundamental ratios. This is like in physics, you always think about looking at fundamental ratios. And some of the one of the fundamental ratios is the ratio of digital to biological compute. Just in raw compute, and how much, and the ratio of digital memory to biological memory. So at what point I think at this point I think we're probably over 99% of all memory is digital as opposed to biological. So you've got over 100 digital to biological ratio in memory at this point, trending towards 1,000, and many orders of magnitude beyond that. Then you've got the digital to biological compute ratio, and since the number of humans is more or less constant, I'm worried about humans declining quite significantly in the years to come because the birth rate is so low. But so human computers more or less it looks like a flat line versus time, whereas the digital compute is exponential.
Right.
At some point that will also be above 100, meaning more than 99% of all compute will be digital instead of biological.
Right.
And if we're not there already, we will be within a year or two.
Although it is amazing how much data biology can store. Right? I believe it's estimated that a gram of dried DNA can store between 400 and 500 exabytes. So maybe there's still things to learn from biology, but yeah, incredible the pace of change.
Yeah, if you encode memories in DNA like a ticker tape, then the DNA memory potential is immense. But I'm not sure that's actually what's happening, or if it is, I don't know. I'm not sure why my memory is so terrible.
But actually, I mean, your memory in terms of the raw details, like you have an amazing search function, right?
For
I
a
mean,
human.
it's kind of like, yeah. Well, for any, I mean, I would argue kind of in some ways like the transformer architecture enables effective search of a very, very broad amount of data. And or that's a or it's like data compression. It seems like the yes, there's many more like data bytes encoded or gigabytes encoded in disk, but actually being able to effectively search that space is pretty still primitive with compute, at least at large scale, relative to humans' ability to access information. No?
I mean, there's still some things that humans do better than computers. I mean, if you look say like computers have not yet discovered any fundamental physics, but humans have discovered a lot of fundamental physics. The computers have not yet invented a useful technology. Humans have invented many useful technologies. So yeah.
Do you ascribe to the notion that like essentially training AI systems on language is not enough, and that you have to have some kind of embodied source of data, like through an Optimus robot, to actually get kind of the raw learning in that a AI system would need to understand fundamental physics?
Yeah, so that's what I think is coming. I think what's coming is AI understanding fundamental physics, and AI inventing new technologies.
It definitely feels like, rather than, even though some things now apparently pass the Turing test, most importantly, passing the moneypenny test, as in, can an AI actually pay bills, do expense reports to the extent James Bond did those, and actually pay parking fines and things like that? That would actually be a very good use of AI that I think would have a lot of users immediately. And maybe the Billy Connolly test of, can an AI actually be consistently funny? Those feel like they're a long way out.
Grok is pretty funny.
That's fair.
I think one of our goals for Grok is to be the funniest AI. So I mean, if you ask Grok to provide a vulgar roast, it's really good.
And speaking of Grok, to not let down our future AI overlords, the final question on the Grok summary that Cathie touched on was the future of Bitcoin. Not sure if we want to touch on that or not, or whether that's out of
Yeah,
scope. But
that and then just before I don't know if we're wrapping up here, but I'd love to talk about Bitcoin and your view of crypto assets, and then maybe back into kind of tying things up. With convergences among technologies. You mentioned that a little earlier, Elon, and the impact ultimately of all of this on economic growth longer term, the surprises that might come from there. But first Bitcoin.
Okay, sure. What's the question regarding
Well,
Bitcoin?
there's when we first when you put it or Tesla put it on its balance sheet, there was I remember afterwards there was this backlash in terms of its economic impact, all of the energy usage and so forth, and then as part of the seminar that we did that you participated in, Elon, we basically and Block had come up with this notion that, wait, you put Bitcoin mining into a utility ecosystem, so that if there's a storage unit and the intermittent energy, the storage unit's full, sun is still shining, the excess power goes over to Bitcoin, and you can mint Bitcoin and overbuild solar and wind and renewables and all of that. So that argument against Bitcoin, and Larry Fink himself used it quite vociferously for a long time until recently. That is going away. What do you think about Bitcoin's potential impact on the financial system, the monetary system, financial services generally?
Well, I have to say I don't spend a lot of time thinking about cryptocurrency. Hardly any at all. I have thought for a long time about money and the nature of money. What is money?
Yes.
And it's really a database for resource allocation. Is the way to think about money, in my view. Now, fiat currency is actually fine as a database for resource allocation if you have a predictable money supply and it doesn't doesn't get inflated or deflated too much.
If it's rules based.
If it's rules based, and provided government does not too much abuse the privilege to create more money, some amount of abuse is almost is guaranteed to happen. But it can go too far. So the temptation over the ages to debase money is, I think it goes back to probably the ancient Sumerians. But as soon as at the point at which money was invented in any form, including in gold, there was the unavoidable temptation to debase the money supply. So when you think of any given money system, I sort of apply information theory to a money problem. Just think of it like it's an information system. You want to minimize noise, minimize latency, minimize packet loss, and so any inflation would be adding noise to the system. If the transaction rate, if what it takes to conclude a transaction is a long time, that adds latency to the system. Fraud is kind of like packet loss. I guess I kind of think of money like I think of information moving on a network. Bandwidth, latency, jitter, which is the variance in latency, packet loss, those fundamental elements.
Yeah, it's been interesting to watch how human beings, in this case the Fed, the words they say whip around markets, and there's just something not right about that. That's my point of view. I think our point of view, certainly on the crypto team, and Art Laffer, who was my professor in school, he's supply side, Austrian School of Economics. When he collaborated on our first Bitcoin paper in 2015. And after he got through reading it, he said, I've been waiting for this since they closed the gold window in 1971. I've been waiting for a new rules-based global monetary system.
Yeah.
And I think that's where our optimism comes from. This is truly rules-based. And so he's gotten more and more excited about it the more he's learned about it. So, anyway, back to convergence though, and you're the maestro here. When I think of when we think of autonomous taxi platforms, robotaxi networks, and so forth, that's the convergence of three of the major platforms around which we have centered our research: robotics, energy storage, and artificial intelligence. Each one of those technologies, basically gearing up for or in the sweet spot of the S curve. And I sort of think it of S curves feeding S curves and creating the potential for explosive growth that no one is expecting. And Brett has just written a paper, it should come out in the next few weeks, around this topic. Just want to get your thoughts about that. And Brett, if you wanted to ask any questions specifically about that. But the bottom line from an economics point of view is we could see, very surprising uptick, not just uptick, a step function up in real economic growth if these technologies are as big as we think they are.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the real economy is not money; it's goods and services.
Mm-hmm.
As I was saying earlier, money is really just a database for resource allocation.
Mm-hmm.
And if there are no resources to allocate, or if the actual goods and services output is fixed, then you can, I guess, try to allocate that same pie but more efficiently. But it's really not nearly as good as growing the pie.
Mm-hmm.
So growing the output of goods and services, productivity is really the thing that leads to prosperity.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, with robotics and AI, I think digital medicine through synthetic RNA, I think these things will just massively improve productivity. If you take the car as an example, and I think you understand this quite well, although not many people do, that if you've got, say, a passenger car, it will typically see 10 to 12 hours of usage, like maybe 1.5 hours a day over the course of 7 days.
Mm-hmm.
But there are 168 hours in a week, so it's really used for a very small percentage of the week normally. And then you've got to park it somewhere as well. So you've got parking costs, storage costs, maintenance costs, and all these costs associated with the car. And at 5 to 10% of asset utilization for a car. And whereas if you've got an autonomous vehicle, that same car that costs basically about the same could now, I think, be used as a rough approximation for about a third of the hours of the week. If you say like productive hours, and this is, I think that's a conservative, but I think it's not far wrong. So if you say like it goes from say 10 hours a week to 50 hours a week out of 168 of useful hours, that I think is not, it's not going to be exactly right, but I don't think it's far wrong. You now have the same asset being able to having 5 times the utility. So that is such a
Provocative.
staggering
Yeah.
leap of productivity. And if Tesla's able to do as I think we will be able to do, which is to upgrade the fleet, so to make it autonomous, it will be the biggest step change in asset value in history. I think overnight.
We agree. We agree.
Right. I'm preaching to. I'm really
And
preaching
you're
to the converted here,
yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
That's why I prefaced it by I realize I'm preaching to the converted. Um,
But you're also underestimating the utility uplift, because that 10 hours that the car is driving a week, somebody is not being paid to drive it mostly,
right.
right? But they're devoting their valuable brain to doing it. As in, kind of, it's actually, there's the human labor loss that accompanies that as well. And so freeing up those hours is actually, I think on Tasha's work, it's as meaningful, as the capital utilization benefit.
Absolutely. And I think you've also predicted a massive increase in traffic. Because once you take away the pain of driving, people will go more places. So there'll actually be more cars on the road driving more places, because if you can sit in the car and be watching a movie or be texting legally, then what that's really much less pain than having to navigate arduous traffic for an hour and a half.
Yeah, many people miss that. I remember it just frustrated me that GM and its marketing material and presentations would say zero congestion, because I think
No.
our
God,
work
that's
would
hilarious.
our work would suggest threefold the amount of traffic, and that's what
Yes.
pushed us into doing more with drones and delivery of food and parcels with drones, and even air taxis, because cannot imagine the commute from JFK into Manhattan being 4 hours or 5 hours or 6 hours. So
Yes, well, fortunately, I have a proposed solution to that, which consists of tunnels.
yes, and we're now in St. Petersburg. If you could build a tunnel from here to Tampa, which is just sand, you're not going to run into anything.
Right.
That'd be very cool.
We can absolutely do that.
Yeah,
So
that would.
the Boring company has actually made tremendous progress. It has, I think, at this point, by far the most advanced tunneling machine. The thing that is the biggest inhibitor of Boring company by far is regulatory approval. It's we are in the United States, and particularly in some states like California, we are being strangled by regulation.
Yeah.
And this is an important point to make, which is, I think, obvious when you think about it, that if we keep making more rules and regulations and laws every year, and those laws and regulations are immortal, but humans are not immortal, then over time you'll be like Gulliver, where you're tied down by millions of strings and you can't move.
It's true. It's true.
Yes.
That's why your first principles approach to your business is so interesting. I wish we had first principles approach to policy making, and because you're right, the regulations are strangling. The only good news here in this, and we've seen it, is other countries want innovation. U.S. has been has been the source of a lot of innovation, but some of our you look at the FAA and drones. That business has done much better elsewhere in the world. It's been very frustrated here, and now the FAA is starting to play ball because of it. Do you think that competitive dynamic or regulatory arbitrage will change things anytime soon, or do we just need someone to come in first principles and kind of figure out a way to convince everyone we need to get a white sheet of paper and not start all over, but you know what I mean?
I think we need to have a process for garbage collection of rules and regulations. that if you don't have some means of deleting rules and regulations, and you only ever add them, then we'll obviously just end up in a situation where everything's illegal.
Yes. Yes.
Which is where we are, and kind of the bigger and more complex the state is, like California and New York, you just have, I guess, first approximation, the number of regulators you have is proportionate to your population. So although Texas and Florida do better in that regard, but there's just so many rules and regulations in California and New York. And if you say, LA County, city of LA, it's now you've got it can take you several months simply to get a permit to change the tiles in your bathroom, literally.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. Things are we've got to do something here, or we're just doomed.
You need a plan.
Yeah.
For this reason, Elon, do you think China is at a competitive advantage? It's command and control. I've heard you, say that they're very tech savvy, down to the mayor of every city. Do you think what has happened over that there's a dynamic changing? Maybe they've over leveraged after 20 years of, basically buying the dip was the right thing to do until it wasn't. Do you think that it is now entered more of a Japanese style, they have to readjust to a new reality? Or do you think, the regulatory or less regulation over there is going to give them a competitive advantage, and innovation's going to, help bail them out?
I don't think China is not immune to the same forces that have driven excess regulation and laws in the United States or Europe. I've certainly seen, just in the course of our operations in China, Tesla in China, we've seen quite a substantial increase in the regulatory burden. So it's a lot harder to get things done now than it was 10 years ago. So what I'm saying is, I think this is just a natural part of the evolution of any country, is the growth of rules and regulations. Now, in history, the forcing function for cleaning up bad rules and regulations, or sort of archaic rules and things that don't really matter anymore, has been war. That has been what has been the cleansing function for rules and regulations. So now we would like to avoid war, as ideally we can do this without war. That would be nice.
Mm-hmm. Has it
That
ever
would be
happened?
nice.
Has it ever happened? Has it ever happened before? I know you're a student of war and battles, and that you really understand that dynamic. Have we ever cleansed the system without it?
I'm not aware of a situation like that. Yes. Now the thing is, in history, wars were very common. So that we're in this odd bit of history where war is quite rare. We're talking about total population of the world divided by number by the percentage of the population at war. If you say, look, what percentage of Earth's population is actively at war? It's very tiny today compared to any time in history. People confuse hearing about war from being in war.
Mm-hmm.
They're very
Well,
different.
and I think exposing, and I know you did in Ukraine with Starlink, exposing what's going on is half of the solution, in a sense, right? Or maybe the reason that that we're not going through the horrors of war, because you can see it in living color, and how devastating it is.
Yeah, I mean, that is certainly something that is possible, that was not possible in the past. Although it clearly doesn't stop the Ukraine war.
Right.
That's still going on. And I think a lot of things, if there'd been social media, it's not clear they would have happened at all. Like the creation of the United States. If I was thinking of, like, if there'd been social media at the time of Roanoke, I think people would have been dissuaded from future voyages.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we're dying of starvation. we're being killed by the locals. We're rife with disease.
That's a good point. Very good
But
point.
that is another way to reset the regulatory landscape, is kind of exploration, right? I mean, like, who knows what? I'm sure there's some set of laws that apply on the moon and potentially Mars, but it's much more difficult to enforce laws from that long a distance.
Yeah, I think ultimately, if there is a self-sustaining city on the moon or Mars, that self-sustaining city will achieve autonomy at some point. I think it's quite important that not quite important, it's extremely important that we become a multi-planet civilization and create a self-sustaining city, ideally on Mars, because that's quite far away from Earth. And I think if something were to take down Earth civilization, then it's less likely to take out a Mars civilization, because Earth and Mars are only in the same quadrant of the solar system, for 6 months every 2 years. So we've got a lot of separation. And I think I think a lot about the Fermi paradox of where are the aliens. I've seen no evidence of aliens. People always ask me if I've seen any evidence of aliens, and I would immediately shout from the rooftops and from the X platform of any evidence whatsoever about aliens. I would be talking about it immediately, and I have thus far seen none. That's a concern, because it means that we perhaps are alone. And maybe there were many other civilizations, but they failed to pass the great filter of going from one planet to being a multi-planet civilization. So I guess my concern is that we need to keep civilization going at least long enough to be a multi-planet civilization. At that point, I think we stabilize civilization and consciousness and greatly extend the probable lifespan of civilization and consciousness as we know it. I do want to emphasize this is not some escape hatch from Earth, because people misinterpret this as like some escape hatch from Earth. This really doesn't apply to me personally, because I will probably die in, I don't know, 40 or 50 years. Hopefully, living that long. Maybe I don't live even that long. But civilization can last for tens of thousands of years, perhaps hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of years. So I think it's very important that we make life multiplanetary while the window is open. And this is the first time in the history of Earth that, in 4.5 billion years of Earth's existence, that it's been possible to extend life and consciousness to another planet. So that window is now open for the first time in 4.5 billion years. Now, it may stay open for a long time, but it may also close. And I think so we should just take advantage of the time when the window is open to make life multiplanetary, and ensure that the tiny candle of consciousness in a vast darkness continues to burn, does not go out.
Do you think that Starlink, you've said kind of advanced the idea that you needed hypersonic travel to basically capitalize colonizing Mars. Is Starlink enough, or do you still need that second kind of like business model built on top of SpaceX to make it happen?
I think Starlink is enough. I think Starlink is enough. There's a little diagram on the Starlink router. It's which people probably don't notice, but it's a Hohmann transfer from Earth to Mars. So if you look on your Starlink router, you'll see that Hohmann transfer diagram. That Starlink is the means by which life becomes multiplanetary. So,
well, Elon, you are pioneering us in an amazing way. A lot of the hope for the future is so much of it has started with with projects you've started and dreams you have, and I think the world's a better place. And I'll end where I started. I know that media clicks, maybe negative it worked, but long run, truth wins out. And you're doing amazing things, and I think the world will thank you for years and years and years.
And maybe just a close.
Charlie?
Oh, sorry, I clicked back on mute. Just as a closing thought to build off that maybe as well, how would you think about inspiring the next generation of entrepreneurs to do the really big, hard things? Does it make most sense to try and do something more consumer internet or something earlier, build up capital, and then go and do something very hard? Or do you think, what would you want to have heard as a starting out entrepreneur thinking about that journey? And also to inspire the next generation to do great things, including building all the cottage industry, no doubt, of things that we'll need to survive on Mars.
Great question.
Well, I actually think that anyone that has a company that's providing goods and services is doing great. I mean, it's not that everyone should tackle so-called in quotes great challenges. I would recommend that they don't actually, because the probability of failure is very high. I think just try to be useful is my advice. It's very difficult to be useful. If you see like total area under the curve of how useful have you been to other people, that cumulatively, it's very hard to make that a big number. So it's really just try to be useful, and make, great products and services that people want and make their lives better. That's it. And as far as encouraging entrepreneurs to start companies, my advice would be that if you need encouragement to start a company, don't do it.
Right. Yep.
Because
Yeah.
the probability of failure is very high. So you really should not. If you need encouragement, don't do it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Elon. As I think, as it's clear, if you have an idea that will fill an unmet need that the world, something the world really needs, and you have a passion to go for it, then yes. But agreed, the probability of failure is, Brett, I think is it 90% for new businesses? 90%?
It depends on what stage you measure it at, but yeah.
Yeah, from startup. Yeah. So.
But that said, anyone that doesn't need encouragement, we'd love to hear for the output.
That's good.
But, I mean, I just have a lot of respect for anyone who works hard and builds things, provides products and services to their fellow humans. I think that's great. Just a lot of respect for an honest day's work, effectively.
Right.
So, all right. Well, it's been a great discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Elon, so much.
Yeah.
This is great.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
All right.
and you know what, Elon? I think the world needs more of this kind of conversation. So maybe every once in a while we can do this again.
Sure. Sounds good. Happy to do
All
it.
right. Thanks so much.
All right. Bye.
Want more content? Early access? A bunch of perks? Click the links in the pinned comment. AG1 has given me a massive, meaningful boost in energy, allowing me to do a lot more every day, including using my brain more and using my body more. I highly recommend you guys and girls check it out. It's an excellent way to fill in nutritional gaps. It's got 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, and whole food source nutrients, plus prebiotics and probiotics and digestive enzymes and adaptogens to help you deal with stress. Plus, if you click the link in the pinned comment or head to drinkag1.com/SMR, you can get yourself a 1-year free supply of vitamin D3 and K2. But don't take my word for it. Here's what some of you guys and girls have to say. AG1 has changed my life. I was, as you described, treating myself like a circus, ate like trash, rarely exercised, used alcohol as a stress crutch, cannabis also. AG1 is what gave me the kick in the ass, got me back to the gym, motivated me to do more for myself, family, my business, etc. Keep doing what you do. Now, I know there's some skeptics, the same kind of people who think Elon Musk is a fraud, reading this going, what do you thought? There's no way that's possible, bro. It must be a placebo effect. Believe it or not, this is a recurring theme. If you give your body everything it needs to feel and perform its best, including having a lot more energy, you'll need ways to use that energy. For me personally, that includes more exercise, moving my body more social activity, and more cognitively demanding tasks, including producing a ton of exclusive content over on Twitter and on Patreon, plus my daily YouTube uploads. The proof's in the pudding. On to another testimonial from a viewer of this channel. SMR, you asked me to provide feedback on AG1. Here it is. It has helped with mental acuity, stamina, and intestinal waste management. Can't read between the lines. It certainly helps with regularity and digestion. That's what the digestive enzymes are for. It has also dramatically reduced my cravings for sugar. You guys need to stop eating sugar. It's fucking poison. I'm 50, 5'9", and overweight, aka a fat motherfucker. I think that's a technical term for overweight, isn't it? Is it fat motherfucker or obese? I can't remember. I average 100 hours a week in the West Texas oil fields as a safety supervisor. Jesus Christ, dude. No wonder you're struggling to keep your weight under control. 100 hours a week. Brutal. It has helped me lose weight. It is not an appetite suppressant. It can help fat people suppress cravings, and motivation to be healthier is critical for changing your diet. Love you, brother. Again, this is a great point and something people really don't seem to grasp. If you have more energy, everything becomes easier. It's like turning on easy mode for life. A few years ago, before I was taking AG1, my health was trash. I was struggling to get through the day, had afternoon fatigue. The last thing I wanted to do was either use my brain or move my body. Didn't have the energy. Now, my biggest struggle every day is figuring out ways to use that energy. I'm exercising way more, doing a lot more with my friends and family, and of course, my work output has increased substantially. And you can fact check me. Check out the average length of my videos I was posting to YouTube 3 years ago. Need I say more? And one final testimonial. Love this one. Okay, here's the deal for me with this AG1 shit. I'm 41 years old and not the type to eat, drink, smoke, or sleep healthy, so I was skeptical. That being said, here's what I experienced. Day 1, meh. Day 2, afternoon fatigue was about 45 minutes late. Day 3, 0 afternoon fatigue. Day 4, 0 afternoon fatigue plus extra energy. Day 5, again, 0 afternoon fatigue plus energy, wondering, what the fuck, really? See, this is the thing, right? The results for many people are just almost too good to be true. This is the same experience I had. My afternoon fatigue just vanished out of nowhere. I'm like, wait, what the fuck? Why am I not tired in the afternoons anymore? Surely it's not that AG1, is it? Turns out it was. Day 6 and 7, same thing. Day 8, same thing. Plus, I had the want to get things done around the house that I normally would slack off and not get done. Again, the point, extra energy, you'll need to use it, you'll find ways to use it. Day 9, 10, and 11, and today is day 12. I fucking love it. So however you managed to get me to buy it, I'm so glad you did. Thank you so much, SMR. It really changed me so far. Guys, this shit really works. Just try it. By the way, this is the reason I continue to relentlessly promote AG1. A lot of people get real fucking mad in the comments. Oh my God, Snake Oil Salmon's sold out. Oh my God, he's a scammer. This is fraud. But constantly, I'm pretty sure everyone making these comments is also currently short Tesla stock. I'm not particularly concerned about people having a negative perception, those folks suffering from small brain syndrome, still living in my bum's basement syndrome, etc., writing mean comments, claiming AG1's a scam or it doesn't work. I mean, bro, when I get feedback like this is what keeps me going. Just try this stuff for a month, and if you don't get these results, get your money back. See, it's a literal no-brainer. It's an IQ test at this point in time. Testimonial after testimonial after testimonial like this. Get your money back if it doesn't work. Just try it for a month, and if it doesn't work, get your money back. Today's the day. It's finally time. Be like this guy who was a massive skeptic, but finally, after 1,000 promotions in a row, caved in, tried AG1, and has results like this. Head to drinkag1.com/SMR or click the link at the pinned comment, and please, let me know how you're feeling in a few weeks' time. Now, if you'll excuse me, time to put my extra energy to good use. I'll be recording some more exclusive content for Patreon and my Twitter subscribers. So click the links to the pinned comment. See you over on Twitter and or Patreon, and don't forget to grab your AG1. Love ya.